Today is pretty exciting. We've got James Young, one of the original contributors to the first Moloch contract. James right now, has a company called collab.land, which if you've ever used Discord or Telegram at all in the DAO space, you've probably ran into collab.land. And they're doing some amazing things. But what he's here to talk about is something a little more spicy, which is DAO AIs.
Happy to jump in, and thanks for that intro, and really appreciate everything that y'all have been doing with DAO House especially. And I've been doing some really deep dives here when it comes to even before Chat GPT came out, but I feel like what we're doing at collab.land, since we are integrated into these different chat platforms, seems somewhat relevant to what's going on in this kind of convergence with AI and crypto. So happy to jump in, and I have a lot of opinions. I can talk for a long time here, but want to make sure that it's relevant to the audience here. So happy to take your direction.
Go ahead, and what you think about?
Yeah, just a quick context. collab.land, as everyone knows, it actually started from abridged no-code tooling, and the collab.land bot was actually a reference implementation of what you could do with our no-code tooling. I think it was actually even too difficult for a lot of people, especially those coming into Web3 via like NFTs. There wasn't, in general, from that persona, a technical foundation or anchoring. It was more coming from the influencer and more of kind of a cultural or art perspective. So they used technology, but they weren't technical. And so they wanted to actually just, install the bot and that's it. And so, we pivoted a bit and we doubled down on just the bot platform. And so now we come, I think, full circle. And in our roots of just being a no-code platform, what I see when it comes to AI is the ability to intro people into how to use these composable platforms. And so the context that I'm coming from when it comes to things like Chat GPT is not so much from like producing content. I think that is going to be a huge part of it, but I think it's going to actually start, and my angle or kind of approach here is using it as a stepping stone into other tooling. So we're working on things where you could actually use Chat GPT to create the foundations or templates for no-code tools. And I think that this shelling point for those that are building in Web3, especially those that are building DAO tools, is going to become, the shelling point is going to become more on the kind of protocol approach. So you'll create tooling that is foundational, but not yet fully complete. And this is where you can use AI to help stitch things together. So this is, I think, very powerful. And an example of it is that if you have access to Chat GPT, you can say, hey, create a simple hello world Discord bot for me. And it'll create that Discord bot with the code, actually. And so, we can actually use Chat GPT as a place to kind of start the coding experience, and instead of it actually landing in code, we can actually have it spit out these no-code templates. And so when you think about it in that way, you can imagine these templates that are being used becoming part of the training model data. And so this is where we can get a flywheel going. And then you can incorporate other types of tooling. So I think that the way that AI will eventually define the development process is going to radically change. We're seeing it a little bit here and there when it comes to like GitHub and their Copilot, which is this AI generation of code. I think that we're seeing it like helping out with mundane programming tasks, like especially when it comes to smart contract development. You can see that the unit tests can be automated, so you can have the bot, the Copilot, create adversarial unit tests, right? And so it can, understand and learn latest attacks and incorporate that into your unit tests, so that you can have a more robust smart contract. And I'm seeing auditors begin to use this as well to help with automation. And so I think that from a tooling perspective, we'll see AI being used to help stitch or integrate different types of tooling, which will then affect what it means to create or stitch together in a composable way, in this kind of money Legos way of the specific needs for your DAO. And you'll imagine dev tooling or dev tooling and dev documentation turning into like, okay, well, here are the prompts rather than here are the like implementation details. So I think in a lot of ways at the beginning of kind of this arc into this next cycle, we'll see, and I'm focused on strategically using AI to help move this Schelling point of coordination. And the dev tooling will need to be able to be playing to not a developer. So, it's not so much, okay, making, it easy to code, but it's going to be making it easy for the AI to help stitch things together. And this is why, in my non-crypto kind of sphere of programming, you're seeing, at least I am, I'm seeing, these older languages that have like a huge history, like Java, kind of coming back actually, because what's really interesting is people had moved away from like XML into JSON because XML was so verbose. And Java as well is just a lot of boilerplate from a programming perspective. But that actually is great for training when it comes to AI. So I think, it questions, beyond crypto when it comes to programming. What do new programming languages look like in the era of AI? And so I think that there's going to be huge impact there on the AI side of things, and the ability to be able to stitch different tooling together. So practically speaking, we're investigating kind of like a quest-based system. And so there are, in the world of outside of crypto, tools in the interactive fiction space. So there's Ink and Yarn Spinner, and those play well. It's kind of like a digital version of those old choose your own adventure books. So, you can imagine a DAO feeding in some training data and an objective, and that objective could be onboarding, quest, or, get on your first mission, or, whatever the case may be. And just having the AI spit out Yarn Spinner or Ink code. And what's interesting about that is that those tools actually have been battle tested. There are many production-based games, commercial games that use this tooling, and it can execute transactions. So you can imagine that instead of popping up a screen for in-app purchase, you can actually pop up a screen to sign a message. And so I think this is going to be kind of the first kind of phase or cycle at least on the building side, that we're going to see. And it might take a year or two for these things to kind of emerge. But once they do, I think, the network effects of data, the data network effects of people being able to converge on this, will then hopefully see this, have the opportunity to go exponential. And so this is kind of what we are seeing in play.
Yeah, I think kind of this like developer assisted AI or AI assisted developer. It's super interesting, like seeing the GPT-3 and people like, write me a Solidity contract to do this, and then it's like, well, this is probably how you do it, and it's crazy. Like the way that we developed DAO v3 is all in composable components, JavaScript components. So if like an AI bot was trained on those, it could. What George's going to be doing later in the week are these RADDAD, rapid application development, DAO application development sessions, and he's going to build a full app. But you could imagine, he's able to do it rapidly because of these composable components. But if the AI, you could just be like, hey, build me a DAO onboarder that gives me 10 shares a day as an app.
Yeah.
And then AI would be like, okay, here you go, and that's pretty incredible. And then, so getting into the story stuff and the quests and the games, like AIs as like the DAO CEOs of the future, knowing objectives, knowing resources available, intent. That's pretty crazy and a little spicy, right?
Yeah, I think that really what we're seeing is this, kind of capacity for manual curation of DAOs. And I think that if we can start on the tooling side, I think there is some insight there where we can learn how we can scale DAOs using automation. So the way I think about it is like we have 2 arms. Typical person has 2 arms, 10 fingers, and you can only address so many chats a day and coordinate. But if you had, an AI to help assist you, it's just like growing arms and fingers and your presence across different DAOs or different, different chats. So I can almost even imagine where, you'll have this kind of emerging class of the connector, right? Where you have this AI bot that might be members of 10 different, 20 different DAOs, and being able to serve and figure out like the best way to represent you so that you can, be a member of multiple DAOs without having to like, chase what's going on or what's happening. I think that tooling and this interop so that the AI can start as being a member and sync or stitch across DAOs is interesting, because I think that there's going to be this like movement toward AI kind of leading a DAO. But I think, and I think that's going to be super helpful, right? It's really the AI is the automation or the autonomous part, and it's going to be included, right? Where I think in terms of the acronym of a DAO, initially it was autonomous, meaning like transactions are trustless and can happen on chain without a leader. But I think that now with AI, we extend that, even broadening that definition to things that are off chain, just to help with automation. So yeah, I think that this, kind of next cycle is going to be about the tooling and how we can interop, but also I think what's really interesting is this other completely separate thread when it comes to AI. And what I mean by that is that on the content side, it's going to be really hard to know whether or not something is original, right? Because as soon as you write something, the AI can consume it and incorporate it. And so how do you know if something is original or not? And I think this is where AI needs crypto. So on the crypto side, we have and we take for granted things like signing a message. And so that we can understand the provenance, and people, for many years have been talking about, oh, this is how we, authenticate things when it comes to like supply chain. I think this is also going to be true when it comes to like the quote unquote supply chain of content. So you're going to need to be able to have a way of proving something is authentic. And I think this is where cryptography plays as well. So I think this next cycle is not only going to be about AI tooling, but it's also going to be about Web3 crypto being able to use decentralized identification and verifiable credentials to prove the authenticity of something that someone has said. Because it's going to be really hard to know, right? Like, is this anon behind a username? Is it even a person or not? And being able to verify the origins of something, even if it is an AI bot. And I think that's going to, be this kind of interesting interplay when it comes to this kind of convergence. And, we're seeing ChatGPT. I think I saw this like stat where it was that what was it? I think I can pull it up. But it was that it took Netflix, several years to get to 1 million users. Facebook, it took 10 months. Instagram, it took 2.5 months. And for Chat GPT to get to 1 million users, it only took 5 days. And we're seeing that network effect. And again, you're going to be able to see, those that are working at Chat GPT or, at OpenAI, being able to take all this feedback and how users are using it and incorporate it and use it as part of a new set of training data. All right. And then that kind of is this flywheel that feeds into itself. So I think we're about to kind of get weird here when it comes to what AIs can do and how quickly things will change. So I know that, we're in the middle of a bear market, but I think this is the perfect time for this kind of technology to emerge and for people to play around with it. I mean, I'm even seeing a lot of people that I, know in crypto actually looking at Chat GPT right now as well. And so I think there are multiple dimensions here in which we can talk about AI and how it can impact things that are pretty exciting. And it's really just this strategy here for those that are builders to kind of skate to where the puck will be at. And I think it starts with like understanding and learning about, okay, well, there is going to be a day, probably, probably sooner than later, where AI and chat is going to be integral in terms of being able to produce code and to produce interoperability or produce integrations. And so it's like, okay, what can you build now, whether it's dev tooling or applications or protocols that kind of assume this reality? And that, well, from a kind of a game theory perspective, that creates or that manifests that reality sooner than later. So I think, it's just, figuring out like what those Schelling points or what are the most logical Schelling points there. So I think there's a Schelling point when it comes to building tools. And then I think there's also this Schelling point when it comes to decentralized ID and verifiable credentials to know and verify like who's saying what. And, I think that's also going to be important because, these AIs are going to someone's going to create hundreds of thousands, if not millions or billions of, anon identities that are going to be managed by AI.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, there's so much in we could go down, so many paths we could go down in what you were just saying there. That last part it got me thinking of, and the part about AIs being members in DAOs as anons potentially. Like I was thinking about delegates, right? Like so delegates you could like imagine a politician that is modeled to represent some platform as an AI, and people delegating all their power to an AI. I mean, there's so many different like, what are the consequences of that, and even on a legal terms, right? Like, what if a DAO is only AI bots? Um, what? Where is the liability there? Uh, one issue, I guess, with AI is, can AI actually be decentralized? Does it need to be? Is like having this verification step of humans making signatures, or what we think are humans making signatures, is that going to be like the role of decentralization, or can the AI tech eventually be something that is not susceptible to capture and resilient to disaster and things like that?
Yeah, these are really interesting questions. And I think in general, whenever there's a new technology that comes out, there are new ethical questions that emerge. And I think that is going to be super important. And, this is what I appreciate in terms of, this open AI initiative of trying to build into the public and building this responsibly. It's exciting. It's going to get weaponized. It's going to get misused if history is any indication. And so it's having these kind of conversations earlier than later, and having these experiments and diving full head first into these kind of experiments. I do think that with AI and this automation, it's also helps in terms of like, what does a future of a corporation look like? Because a bot, it's very difficult to kind of sign a legal contract, but it's easy for a bot to sign a message. So I think we're going to see this emergence or new class with AI at its core. But I don't know exactly how it's going to, play out. To your questions with regards to kind of how do we look at this from the current legal system, if that's even the right purview here. And it's one of those kind of technologies where kind of like crypto blockchain stuff, like the cat is out of the bag. So we got to deal with it. And so it's healthy, I think, to have these kind of conversations actively with regards to what is appropriate, what isn't, and not discourage innovation, but try and get ahead of it as much as possible. And I think this is part of the reason why, things like stable diffusion, which if my memory serves me correctly, actually came out of, they wanted to actually have that a DAO. I think it was like on it was on Stacks, which is a platform. I think it's using Bitcoin, I believe. I can't remember all the details there, but I think that there was this kind of initiative to actually have this start out as a DAO because of the potential and the kind of ethical questions that were raised here. So there is actually deep roots when it comes to crypto and AI in terms of like having it DAO based potentially. But we're LARPing in DAOs, and it's hard just to have humans coordinate. Does it, from a AI perspective, make it easier or more difficult, or what are the new kind of second order effects that emerge here? And I think we can only really know if we can start experimenting. And so part of the conversations here should like spur on like fun little experiments and kind of doing things so that we can get more insight into what is the potential, because it's difficult to kind of wrap our heads around, okay, what are the next steps here? Because it's a kind of technology, because of the flywheel effect of data, where it's going to get exponential really quickly. So I think things are going to be changing, and to me, another proof point is I see those that I respect and admire from a technology, whether they are in crypto, Web3 or not, or different fields, kind of like engaged in AI, and it's one of those kind of like magic moments. I'm old enough to be around prior or before the internet to seeing kind of like the awe and the kind of magic and the inspiration that the internet brought at first, and then with like mobile as well. And I think like AI here is kind of in that kind of step change category of innovation that has captured people's imagination. So I think that there's going to be a lot of experiments, and it's just being part of like this conversation and other kind of conversations where people are kind of experimenting, tinkering, and building that will be able to kind of answer these ethical questions. There's probably, I wouldn't be surprised already if there was a DAO that actually was run by an AI that we just don't even know about yet.
Yeah, that is super crazy to think about. We talked about this earlier, but it reminds me of a book called "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress" by Heinlein, where basically the moon colonists revolt against Earth, and an AI is running the whole thing. But it's super crazy. Does anyone have any questions in the last few minutes? UI, anything come to your mind listening to that?
Yeah, I think that when I look at it, because that question, I think has me think about like what really is a DAO, and kind of what are the kind of benefits of being a DAO. Well, for me, I think of this kind of technology as reducing coordination. So in a lot of ways where, you have these decentralized technologies, like the concept of like time. Time is not something that anyone owns, but we all use it to coordinate. In the same way, I think that with a DAO, we can coordinate individuals. And with AI on top of that, to your point about it being augmented, it's just that it allows for coordination reduction for human beings. I think that what would be interesting is, can you use AI in such a way where you can keep interest in a DAO? Can you solve for voter apathy and also be able to help manage human burnout when it comes to a DAO? I think that like framing it in that way and helping with lowering coordination costs is going to be interesting, and I think it's going to actually manifest in ways that like we don't even really know about, right? Because now with AI, especially, you look at even like Stable Diffusion, right? And you see these great images and people changing their PFPs into, and I actually have one as well, like this is an AI generated profile pic of me, right? Where like, people's attention is going to be even more scarce. So the DAOs that don't use AI for content generation to make and keep things interesting are just not going to get the attention that they need. So they're like, oh, the argument is, well, with AI, it's going to produce movies and content and music and blah, 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 but people don't have enough time to like watch all this stuff because there's a human kind of like cap to your attention, right? And so like, yeah, there might be a winner or two here when it comes to the new AI version of content generation for Netflix, but I'd rather say it's like kind of going to seep into everything else, kind of like the whole kind of Mark Andreessen software is going to eat the world, kind of with AI, content generation is going to be super cheap. So every single meeting that you have, every single thing that you do is going to have to be somewhat entertaining, I think, in the future, because it's going to be AI facilitated. So if you can't have a DAO meeting, you can't have a proposal that is going to have some intrigue that's not customized or personalized via AI for that individual, people are not going to pay attention to it. So I think that it's not just tooling and not just like being able to, verify who you are, but also like, it's all going to be about coordination reduction. And part of that, I think initially, is going to be keeping people's attention. And if you can't keep people's attention, you can't coordinate with them. So I think that there's going to be a lot of like, kind of this kind of consumerization of the corporation that will happen first with DAOs. And AI is going to make DAO content generation, voting, proposals, all of that a lot more tailored and a lot more interesting. And those are the DAOs that use AI that I think are going to split off. because they're just going to be more fun.
Yeah. So you say,
Yeah,
so like, so let's say that I am an augmented intelligence, right? Like I'm going to use that term. I'm on board with AI. I've developed some skillfulness in using it. I have the capacity to generate art, quote unquote art that looks amazing, and I've maybe even developed a profile of you, James Young. Like I've got a word frequency chart and I know what you like, and then I'm like, oh, I want to do a presentation for James Young. I basically could whip up a slideshow that appeals to your particular taste and keeps your attention. Is that kind of an example of how me as an AI empowered DAO entrepreneur might be more effective than somebody who can do all of that?
Yeah, that's right. And then you mix in the AI not only from a content personalization, entertainment perspective, but then you have, as the DAO kind of summoner, like you have goals that you want that DAO to reach. And so you've captured my attention, you personalized it, I'm engaged, and now the AI could also integrate different tools that already exist to meet the goals of that DAO. And so that's this kind of facilitation where it's not just the content, but it's also the building of it as well. And so this is kind of this next phase of content meets integration, where, in Web 2, so going from Web 1 to Web 2, right, with UGC, the consumer became the producer, and that was like this huge thing, right? Now we're going to cross a similar chasm, I think, these boundaries of who is the builder, who is the content producer, and how do you use the user, the recipient, to help build out in a dynamic way the integrations and the tools, so that you as a developer don't have to say, okay, I'm going to build XYZ because it's going to capture this kind of mainstream adoption or whatnot. But it's more of like iteration through this AI where you have my attention, and now I'm going to also have the AI integrate into build tools that are going to personalize my experience, because I might not like Discord. I might want to be on Telegram, so it's going to manifest itself in a Telegram bot. Or I use Telegram and Reddit, or I use WhatsApp, or whatever all these other tools are. I use Jira instead of Asana, and so like all of this will be customized, and so the AI will be able to meet me where I'm at. And so I think that way, the AI, if you can build it correctly, it could actually have more empathy for a user and meet the user where they're at better than a human can.
That's crazy.
Augmented empathy. It kind of touches on the decentralized aspect.
I think we could talk about this probably for the next few hours. It's such a crazy thing. And maybe as a transition into our next talk, you were talking about a DAO like being able to like introduce, or an AI being able to introduce the tools for a DAO to be more effective or efficient. And I think so. In our next talk, we're talking about algorithms. Maybe another use for the letter A in DAO, I think AIs could like generate the algorithm that makes governance less needed or minimizes the requirement for governance. And there's a lot of interesting tie-ins there. So James, thank you so much for hopping on and talking about that. I feel like we're going to have to dive into this more because there's just so much we could talk about.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This is super fun. And I love talking with those that are building too, because this is where it all starts. Thanks.
Yep.
I'm gonna hop off.
I welcome our. Yep. Thanks, James. I welcome our new robot AI overlords.